Hi there, my name is Taylor, and today I want to share with you my portfolio that I took to universities when I was applying for my graphic design course. When I was applying to study graphic design. I want to share this because of the fact that when I was making the portfolio, I struggled to find good examples of other people's portfolios, and so I found it really hard to judge whether mine was any good or not and what my chances of being accepted were. So I'm sharing this so that you can get an idea of what it takes to get to where I am. Maybe you'll find some useful ideas as well. There are a few considerations I had to make when designing my portfolio. This is a visual course, so I had to demonstrate that I could create good work. I also needed to have an opportunity to talk about the work, rather than just showing the visuals, having the story behind it. It needed to be really portable because I was taking it all over the country. It also needed to be big enough that I could show things at scale, I could present things nicely. I needed to show that I cared about the portfolio, so that it showed that I cared about the course that I was applying for. So although the portfolio was only ever used for me to get onto the course, I put a lot of time and effort into it in order to make sure that that represented the time and effort I would be putting into the course I was applying for. So with that in mind, my portfolio looks like this, in this black case. Let me show you now. Okay, so I went for A3 size because it gives me plenty of space to show off the work. And what I did was I had my work printed on this thick card. So as you can see, this is a stack of cards, and each one is, I think, around 250 GSM paper. I had this printed at a professional printing company, and I think it makes a really big difference to how the work looks. You can see the images are really quite good quality. Anyway, started with my name. It's quite important for when you can't be in the room to talk about your work. So I started with a page of some of what I've been reading. I thought it might be nice to show kind of where some of my inspiration was coming from. And then this project I put first because at the time it was by far my largest portfolio piece. So this is work for a festival which involved a lot of different graphics and video and photography work. Each project has a small description, just a couple sentences really, and each image has a caption as well. Photos that I took from events, and here's a record of some of the things that I was involved in. Here's a photo of me on the radio and doing photography, and also a lot of our work published in the newspaper. So at the time I made sure to make a record of all of these things so that I could show them in my portfolio. Sonic Youths is an organisation where I live that showcases up-and-coming music artists, and this is where I really started doing gig photography. In fact, it's where I kind of started photography at all. The reason I bought a DSLR was to take photos at gigs. This is one I'm quite proud of actually. The Green Party has quite a strong presence where I live, and I really like the work that they do. So at the time I did a lot of volunteering work for them. This has turned into paid work over the past couple of years. But yeah, at the time I did some work for them on a voluntary basis. This project is by a book publishers, specifically for entrepreneurs. So a lot of these books were to do with self-improvement, and I was commissioned to do a couple of book cover designs for them. Here you can see a lot of the process work that I went through, and showing process work is especially valuable during interviews because they really like to see how you went from the start to the end of a project. Here it continues again. This is me demonstrating slightly different skills. Here I did some hand-drawn typography. This is the first and the last time I've really done it, but it shows that I am kind of capable of practicing some slightly different skills. This design was never actually made, but showing it in a mock-up really does make a big difference to the look and feel of your portfolio. This is a real client brief. I met the owner of Protrition at a networking event, and since then I've been producing the marketing material for him. He does nutritional takeaway food. It's very healthy, and it's especially useful for people who are training, health coaches, nutritional experts, things like that. I broke down why I made some of these design decisions. Often the person interviewing you won't really take the time to read all of these little details, but if they do, it's really good to show your attention to detail there. You'll notice that it's a very consistent portfolio. The photos always presented in the same grid, captions always in the same font and at the same size, and that's really important again to show organization. This was my first ever client, Integra Aerospace. In fact, the owner of Integra Aerospace is my mum's boss, and that is how I started freelancing. So this was my first ever client project, producing these infographics. And I still remember how I produced them in Photoshop, which is really not the right software to be using. Since then, I've done quite a lot of work for him. Again, showing some of the process sketches here. This was a self-initiated project for my EPQ or extended project qualification at sixth form. I decided to study design for social change. This was a project that I did in order to fulfill that qualification. I produced a branded campaign on raising awareness for wildlife bridges, which are crossings that are built across roads in order to allow animals to cross safely. They're really successful where they've been tested. So I created a logo and social media touchpoints, and I'm really proud of this one because this was not a brief given to me by a client, but just something that I felt was important to make. This is an Instagram account that I ran from September of 2016 onwards because I wanted to learn how to use Adobe Illustrator, and I wanted a way to motivate myself to keep learning and also to share the things that I was learning. So I created an Instagram account and started posting things on there, at first every single day, and then it slowed down as I got on. Actually, this was a really good project to show because it showed a lot of real consistency and hard work. By the time I went to my interviews, I had 16,000 followers, and as it stands now, I think it's around 80,000. So that was a really good example of taking my own initiative and working on a project of my own. This is a printing museum in the city where I live. In fact, it's one of only a couple in the country. So it had a massive collection of screen prints and letterpress equipment and really old printing equipment from the last 200 years. And I decided to go in there and volunteer. I ended up volunteering there for about a year, met some amazing people, most of whom were pretty old, but I learned a huge amount just by hanging around with them and seeing how things used to work. Here's just a spread of some photography. I wasn't really sure if this was important or not, but I wanted to show that I had kind of developed a range of skills. So as well as graphics, I also had the photography. And then finally, I wanted to show a couple of small projects that weren't worth a sheet of their own. Album covers, logo, business cards. Right at the very end, I had a page here which would link people to my website. I did bring my laptop with me to interviews and I had my website ready to share, but I think it was only in one interview that they really needed to see that. In the others, by the time they'd seen all of the work, I think they'd kind of made up their mind. I do recommend that you have a website available because sometimes that's all you'll be able to show them. And you can leave it with people as well. If you have the website link, then they can access it at any time. Having a portfolio website put together is surprisingly uncommon, I think. A lot of people don't take the time to really make their work presentable online. And yeah, that's it, blank on the back. So that was it. And after they had seen the portfolio, we had usually a long conversation about the industry, about my understanding of the course, and then 10 minutes later I would take my portfolio and head home. And a couple of weeks later I then got the results. In total I applied for 5 arts universities, and they were the London College of Communication, Bournemouth, Bath, Falmouth and Leeds. In the end, I was accepted to 4 and I was rejected by Leeds, which was their loss if you ask me. Some feedback I was given on the portfolio, they liked the fact that there was just a small amount of text because they didn't want to have to do lots and lots of reading, but they did want to know that there was a story behind it. They also seemed to really like to be able to spread all of the sheets out on a table and look at them simultaneously, so I'm glad that I didn't bind it in that way. My advice for anybody making their portfolio for university applications would be to think of your portfolio as a project in itself. Don't just take the work you've done and put it together and take it along. I saw a lot of people turning up with massive folders stuffed full of unorganized papers, and it just doesn't communicate care and attention. I think it's really important to craft your portfolio for the lecturer, because they see, in those interview rooms there were 40, 50 other people just like me, but with more qualifications. So I really had to show that I cared by putting that portfolio together. Start early as well, because I got mine printed from a printing company. That took a bit of time, and so I needed to do revisions at one point, and I'm glad I left myself a couple of days buffer so that I could get those reprinted. If you leave it too late, you will probably end up attending the interview feeling like you've forgotten something or missed something. And the last thing is just that really it doesn't matter that much. The lecturers are definitely there to interview you as a person, because you're there to learn how to produce work. What they really want to see in the interview is that you are an interested and an interesting person, and that's regardless of your portfolio. When you walk in, put your portfolio on the table, show them what you need to show them. Maybe don't treat it like a presentation, treat it more like a conversation starter, and they really want to spend that time speaking with you and your opinions and your thoughts and how you arrived at these things. I think that's just about all I have to share. But if you're interested in seeing more of the projects I've done for clients, then let me know. And thank you for watching. I'll see you soon.